Thanks for giving you on this.
Welcome back to the arcade. Today we're going to start on part number 7 of the Star Wars cabinet repair. And when we left off the last video, we did the Bondo work. We went through and did these front bottom corners of the cabinet, and got them looking pretty good. And when I left off, I still had the bottom corners to do. So it turns out I had a lot more loose wood than I thought I had in the center. So I had to take my Dremel and cut a lot of wood out. So I do have an awful lot of Bondo in here. But as you can see, it came out pretty good. And one on the other side, pretty much the same way. Now, I believe this corner is supposed to have a little bit of a roundness to it, and so is the one down here, but I got them more squared off. After I cut the T-molding grooves back in it, I may round it off, or I may just leave it like this. It's on the bottom of the cabinet, and nobody's going to really notice it anyway. So next thing I'm going to have to do is to go ahead and recut the T-mold slots, basically just on the corners, and right down to here. I'm not going to go back over the wide groove that's already cut, because if you got it off just a little bit, it's going to skim the side of this, and it's probably already loose enough, even though I put wood hardener in here to kind of swell it back up and take up some of the slack. And I think the T-molding is going to be okay. If it's a little loose on the bottom edge where we had a little swelling, then I might have to go ahead and fix it with the end anyway, with maybe a little bit of hot glue or some type of adhesive. I don't really want to put staples or nails in it if I can get away with it. So anyway, like I say, I'm going to have to cut the bottom corners, and then from about right here, we're going to have to redo this corner back up to where the good groove starts again. And the same thing on this side. This side had a lot of swelling to it. So when I squeeze this back together and put the wood hardener on it, it goes all the way back to right here. So probably start about right here and then work my way down to here. And then I got this little area right here where I had to redo this area on the side. And then of course we'll start again down here on the bottom. Okay, so that's where I'm at now. Next thing, I need a router and I need a T-molding slot cutter. I have one. I've had one for, oh gosh, when I used it the first time was probably around the year 2000 when I got my Star Trek cockpit, because the base of the monitor and the base of the seat, I had to make a new base for both, and that had T-molding grooves in it. So I had a router and a slot cutter, and I used it, put it in the garage, and it stayed in there. I never used it again until 2013, or no, 2012 I believe it was. So when I was getting started on my Fix-It Felix project, which I still haven't finished, but I did make a new Nintendo control panel, which Nintendo control panel, you have to have a T-molding groove across the front edge because it's got a piece of T-molding. So that was the last time I used it, and it's out in my garage. I put it somewhere so I know where it was. Guess what? I can't find it. I've looked high and low. Evidently, I just hid it from myself. So, what to do? Gotta have it. So, I went ahead and went to Sears and I purchased a brand new router. And I went to Harbor Freight and I purchased their slot cutter set. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the unboxing and set up and see what it looks like. Okay, well first I'm gonna start off with the slot cutter. I got this at Harbor Freight. I believe they run for $27.99, but you can often find anything there on sale or with a 20% off coupon. So I've already opened this up, and it comes in a nice little case with a, I don't know if that's glass, I think that's plastic. And it comes with 6 different size slots. We have a 1/16 of an inch, 3/32, eighth of an inch, 5/32, 3/16, and a 1/4 inch. Now, for standard T-molding, we need a 1/16 of an inch, and I've already, the arbor came right here, so I've already put it together, and it has a nut on it and a bunch of washers, because you can actually stack a couple of these together to get whatever width slot you want to cut. If you want to cut bigger than a 1/4 inch, you can put the 1/4 inch next to any of the other sizes and put them both on the arbor to create a wider cut. But like I say, for T-molding, all we need is the 1/16 of an inch bit. And I went ahead and got the 1/2 inch shank. They also sell a set that comes with the 1/4 inch shank. It depends on your router. Now, a lot of times nowadays, routers, you can get them in a combo like this right here. This is the Craftsman router I bought. I believe I paid somewhere between $75 and $85 for it. I don't remember exactly. I've had it now for about a month, and I haven't even opened it yet. But this is a variable speed, 2 horsepower, and variable speed is something that you want because a lot of times your bits are rated for RPM, and this particular bit here is stated right on the cutting wheel not to go over 16,000 RPMs. So I looked at some routers, and some routers that were fixed speed were over 16,000 RPMs. So if you have one like that, you need a speed controller to put in line, which Harbor Freight sells those too. But anyway, this was variable speed from 10,000 to 25,000 RPM. This also has 2 bases with it, a fixed base and a plunger base. Now, for what we're doing T-molding, all we need is the fixed base. We won't need the plunge base. The plunge base comes in handy if you say want to cut a groove in your wood, and you're not going to go all the way to the edge of the wood. Let's say you want to make a 1/4 inch groove for some reason, just right in one little area. You can set it up so that you put the router flat on your piece that you want to put the groove in, and it has a depth gauge where you can set the depth, and then you actually turn it on and push it down till it hits the stop on that depth gauge, and then you can go ahead and route your groove and then let it back up. You could do it with a regular fixed base, but it's a lot easier to do something like that with a plunge base. But like I say, all we're going to need is the fixed base. So let's go ahead and open it up and see what we got here. And let's see, has some kind of bar here. I guess that's maybe a guide. Who knows? But we'll find out. And it comes with a nice carrying case where you can keep it in this carrying case. So now I'll be able to put it in this carrying case, and maybe I won't lose the darn thing. Okay, all right, here is the Plunge router base, and like I say, see how it compresses? You put your router in here, your router motor, and this is your base, and of course you can set it up, a depth gauge and all that, but like I say, we're not going to use this. Okay. All right, here's another one of those bars. I think that's probably some type of a guide where you can, if you want to cut along an edge, you know, you can set up a guide that would keep your router straight. But like I say, we'll find out. Okay. All right, here's the router. It's already set up with the stock, just fixed base on it. So that's pretty much ready to go, I guess. And let's see, we got some books. We got our owner's manual, which is always nice to have. And then a book that says Getting the Most from Your Router. So it has some router setup tips and procedures for cutting. So if you've never used a router before, it even tells you how to use it. You can mount this on a router table, which means you have a table that you bolt the router to from the bottom side, and the bit comes up through the table and has a fence on it. So that's like you use that to make, you can make moldings and edges on pieces of wood. So routers are a very versatile, underrated tool, and there are a lot of things you can do with them. But we're just going to use it to cut a T-molding slot. And let's see, we got something else in the box here. Let's see what this is. Okay, this looks like that guide I was talking about. Those two long bars go in here, adjustment bars, and this right here you would put on the edge of like a table and use it as a guide. So, but we're not going to need that. It also comes with a set of wrenches for putting your cutting tool into the router. And this one here also comes with a 1/4-inch collet. So if you already have a slot cutter with the 1/4-inch shank, or if you have other router bits with 1/4-inch shank, this one comes with both a 1/4-inch collet and a 1/2-inch collet. The 1/2-inch obviously is already on the router. And if you don't know what a collet is, it's basically, think of it as a chuck in a drill, except this one isn't adjustable. This one is only for a 1/4-inch, and the other one is for a 1/2-inch. And when you tighten up the nut, it tightens down on the shank. So, okay, so let's go ahead and I'll put it on the table here, and we'll go ahead and put the slot cutter in the router. Okay, well, I've skimmed over the instructions, and I've already plugged this in and tried it to make sure which way this rotates. Usually on a router, they usually put an arrow somewhere showing you the direction of the rotation. And it gets kind of confusing because in the manual it says it rotates clockwise, but if you're looking at the bottom of it, it actually, the shaft is rotating counterclockwise. I think what they're saying is that when you have it down on your work and you're looking at it, it spins this way, so it's clockwise looking down from the top side, but if you're looking at it from the bottom, it's counterclockwise. That's kind of weird, but anyway, so it gets a little confusing. Another thing too is they say in the manual that your bit shouldn't be any bigger than the hole in the plastic bottom right here, because in order to put a bit in, you're supposed to unlatch right here and push this in. Well, I can do it. This is the clamp that clamps the motor into the base. Then you have preset depths where you can slide this up and down. So if you push this right here, it unlocks it so you can pull the motor out of the base. Now this is how they say you're supposed to put the bit in. You put the bit in. This right here is the lock that locks the shaft from turning, and then of course you use your wrench to tighten up the nut on the collet. Okay, well if we did that, we wouldn't be able to put this back in because the slot bit is bigger than that hole right there. And it mentions something in the manual about you can change the base. If you have a bit that's bigger than the hole in the bottom of the base, you can get another base. Well, I don't have that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back in. Okay, and clamp it back down for now. And on this side, take this plastic window off. Actually, we don't even need this on there, but because on this side you have access to your lockdown pin that locks your shaft. And we're just going to go ahead and install the router bit right in here. And you're supposed to be able to put it all the way down. And of course, make sure you got it unplugged when you're doing all this, because you definitely don't want to accidentally put it on. Okay, now it slides in and out. So I'm going to put it all the way in. And now I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the nut. And obviously they designed it this way so that you can do it this way. And you just want it snug. You don't have to over tighten it. But because this thing is going to be rotating at, what did we say, 16,000 RPMs, you definitely don't want it coming out. Okay, I just noticed where the arrow is. This does have a directional arrow. Right here on the, it's kind of made into the casting, and it's a half an arrow, but it does point in this direction. So if you're looking down from the top side, it's spinning clockwise. But if you're looking this way, it's counterclockwise. And my understanding is that when you're cutting, you has 3 carbide tips. That's what does your cutting. It's these 3 carbide tips. And since it's rotating in this direction, the tip is feeding into the wood. Now, since we're going to be cutting a slot, your wood is going to be up against here. And let's see, I wish I had a piece of wood here handy. Do I? Well, I can use this. Let's say this is the cabinet and we wanted to cut a slot in this. Of course, it's not wide enough, but put it up here like this, and which way do you go with it? When you, let's say we already have a slot cut and we put it in the slot, it's rotating in this direction. Well, which way do we go with it? Should we go this direction? If we go in this direction, when the cutter comes up to the top, it seems like to me it would pull the wood out and make a bad cut. It seemed like to me that we want to be going, let's see, in this direction, so that the cutter is making its cut into the top edge and then throwing it out the back. So let's see, if we got it on top of the cabinet here and we want to make a cut going in this direction, I'd say we'd start on the back side of the cabinet and work our way this way, so we would be going down this side of the wood to make our cut. I hope that's right. That's what I'm thinking. And if we flip it around to the other side, then we're going to be starting at the bottom and working our way back up, because it's just opposite from this side. So okay, well, we'll go with that. Okay, now in order to adjust this at the right depth, what we have to do is, over here we have to first loosen a clamp up for the motor, and we have this adjustment right here. And all we do is turn this adjustment. Let's see, I want to go this way with it. And turning it in this direction is pushing the motor unit out into the work area. So all we have to do is keep turning it till we line it up. Let's see, yeah, that's the right direction. Okay, it hadn't started, it hadn't clipped in. Okay, now we're moving. Now all we have to do is hold it up to the edge and get it lined up. And that looks pretty good right there. And clamp it down. So before we cut the joint, the slot, I'll go ahead and I'll put it up on the top side. Now another thing too is the cabinet, I got it laying on its back, which means the T-molding slots are vertical. It would be a lot better if we were cutting the slot with it on its side. It'd be a lot easier to hold this, because this is a lot of weight. And if you got it down on its side, trying to cut a slot, it's harder to keep it straight. But since I don't have too much to do, I'm going to try it on its side and see what happens. Can't get it so messed up. This also has something my other don't have. Of course, it does have the speed controller on it here, but it has what they call I believe they call it a soft start. I think is what they call it. And what that does is just what it says, what it implies. Instead of going full bore, full speed, it starts up slow. So let me show that to you real quick. Okay, I got it plugged in, got a good grip on it. I'll turn it on and watch the cutting bit there. Okay, and of course I got it set at a slow speed. Should put it on 3, and that should be the speed we're going to be cutting at. So let's see what that is. Okay, well, now we're going to unplug it, and I'm going to go ahead and line it up on the groove on the top of the cabinet there and see if it's lined up properly. And I guess we're ready to cut some slots. Okay, well, before I cut the T-molding slots, first thing you need to do is get your blade set at the right height. And it's a little tricky because a fine movement up or down either way can get you, it'll throw you off a little bit. So the only way to really do it right is measure it as close as you can, and then get a piece of test wood and go ahead and make a cut, and then check it with a piece of T-molding to see if you got it centered. If not, if it's a little bit high on one side or a little bit low, then you just come back and make a fine adjustment till you get it right. So I think I got it right. I made a couple cuts on this wood right here. It's close, but it was a little off, so I tweaked it. So I think I got the final cut ready. So let me go ahead and plug the router in, because anytime you're making adjustments on it, you want to make sure you got it unplugged, because you don't want to be digging into your skin, cutting off fingers and all that kind of stuff. You have to respect any type of power tool, any power equipment, even hand tools. You have to respect it. You always keep your fingers away from it. So anyway, we're all set, and I'm going to make a cut here and see what happens. Okay, now if I can find my T-molding, I'll stick it in here, see what it looks like. Okay, well, here we go. Let me go ahead and stick our T-molding on the groove here. Absolutely perfect. See if I can get it in the camera here. It's flush on this side, flush on this side. So I say we got the depth all set correctly. Now we can go ahead and make the T-molding cut. Only one thing that might be a problem, so let's take a quick look at that. Okay, well, on the top here, I got this corner back in where it should be, 3/4 of an inch wide. So shouldn't be a problem cutting the slot here. It may be a little bit misaligned with the original slot, but I don't think it'll be much more than maybe a 32nd of an inch or a 64th, so it'll be fairly close. But now down here on the bottom is where we had a lot of swelling. And if I put my square here, which is set at 3/4, you can see that it's wider than 3/4. But if I continue with the cut using the outside as a gauge, then it's still going to be, when you put the T-molding in, the outer edge is going to be flush. If it won't line up, it's going to be on the inside, which is okay with me. And I can, before I paint this, I can always take and sand this down if I want to. But that's not critical. And I think we'll have the same problem on the other side. But like I say, I don't think it's going to be much of a problem. Up here on the top, it seems to be back to its original size. So I think we should be okay on the front corners. The bottom, I think we'll be able to sneak by with them. Now, before I can cut this slot here, because I'm using the Harbor Freight T-molding slot, and it's designed with a long shank, and with that all those washers and that nut sticking on it. When I come down here, this is going to be in the way because it'll hit that nut on the end of the arbor. So I'm going to have to take these 2 lag bolts out here, and the 2 on the bottom, and of course the 4 or the 2 on each one on the other side. So it's getting kind of late tonight, so I'm not going to cut it tonight. I'll try to come back to it tomorrow and go ahead and I'll get it all set up. I'll take these lag bolts out and get it ready to cut, and we'll go ahead and cut the slots. Okay, well, I've taken the lag bolts out of the leg leveler plates so that we'll have clearance for the arbor right here. So I hope that's going to clear it. That might not clear it. Okay, well, I found out that even with the lag bolts taken out, the leg level of plates was just high enough to where it was going to hit the nut on the arbor of the slot cutter. So I had to go ahead and remove the plates that I'd put on. No biggie, just a little bit extra work. So now let's go ahead and cut this T-molding groove. Because of the rotation of the slot cutter, we need to start up here and work our way in this direction. So I'm going to start about right here where it starts to get narrow and come down to right here, and then I'm going to stop because it's probably not going to be aligned perfectly with this because of the swelling, but I'm going to start it back again here and finish that bottom. And then we'll probably have to shift the cabinet over a little bit so I have some more room on the other side. That side, because of the way the slot cutter cuts, I think I'm going to have to start on the bottom and work my way up and across the top. But I'll get to that when I get to that. So let's go ahead and try it. I already have this preset so that it's going to cut exactly in a 3/4 inch. It's going to be exactly in the middle. And by keeping it flush on the outside all the way around, even if the wood is swollen down near the bottom, the groove I'm going to cut should mean that the T-molding is still going to be flush with the outside of the cabinet. I don't care about the inside of the cabinet. It's not going to matter. The only thing is the cabinet's laying on its back. That's going to make it a little bit harder because the router really, it'd be easier if it was on its side, and then I'd be able to let the weight of the router just sit on the side of the cabinet. But because I got it on its back, because of the limited space in here, it's too hard to move it around. I'm going to have to do it this way, which means all the weight on the router is going to be wanting to pull it down. So I'm going to have to be real careful and trying to keep this straight. So anyway, let's go for it. that makes a mess. But at least we got our slot cut, and it cut right through this Bondo, and it didn't chip out, so that's good. So if we are to go ahead and put this new piece of T-molding in here, yep, that should work. And it lined up pretty good. I might have to cut this one piece right here. Looks awful tight. Let me see. Yeah, I should cut that right there. Missed that one little spot. That's why I put the clamp on here to try to pull this side in a little bit, and it sort of made that gap a little bit narrow there. So let's go ahead and fix that too. Okay, much better. Okay, now we're going to have to do the other side. I don't quite have enough room to squeeze in here to get to that other side, so I'm going to have to pick the cabinet up with my lift table, move it over a little bit, and then reposition my step stools that I got it on, because just on the lift table itself it was rocking too bad to be able to use the router, so I had to set it down. I got a little step stool like on both ends that's holding the weight so it's solid. So let me reposition it and then we'll come back and cut this other side. Okay, well, let's go ahead and cut this other side out now that I got it repositioned. And just as I was thinking, that because of the rotation of the blade and the direction that you have to go in to get it to cut correctly, we're going to have to start at the bottom this time and work our way up to the top. So let's see if I can get it done here. I don't know. I believe I had it tilted a little bit that time on that corner. Let me see. Yeah, it's definitely off. Well, you can't be perfect all the time. Maybe I can straighten it up and widen it up, and then I can put a little bit of hot glue in that joint. Let's see what I can do with it here. Well, that's going to make the slot extra wide. But like I say, I can always hot glue it because at least now I can push it over and it's going to be straight right there. The only other thing I can do is go ahead and put some filler back in here and recut it. But I don't think I need to do that. It's on the bottom corner, and all I got to do is just put the hot glue right here in this to take up the space. So I think I'm going to live with that. Okay, that's done. Now what I need to do is go ahead and take this T-molding off. So I'm going to go ahead and strip all this old T-molding off. And it feels good and tight along the back here. A little loose up around the monitor there. All right, I need to get that lift table out of there so I can get to that. Okay, we got that side off. And this side don't feel too bad. It's still a little bit loose up around the sides here for the monitor. So what I'm gonna have to do is take and either bring my air gun back in here or maybe I can make do with canned air, try to blow this crack out, the T-molding groove, to get any loose particles out of it. Or I could take my vacuum cleaner and vacuum it out. That's an idea. Then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, like I did on the corners and along the bottom edges, I'm going to go ahead and take some Mem Wax wood hardener and just squirt it in the T-molding groove on the top of the cabinet. And may even, yeah, it's a little soft right here, so I may even put a clamp on in a couple places and get it back in spec, and then let the wood hardener do its trick. Then once the wood hardener hardens up, then we can come back, do the final sanding on our Bondo work here, tape it off, and go ahead and paint these edges. And I'm going to take and paint the top side of the flat part where the T-molding goes down on, and then we'll install the T-molding. Well, the more I kept thinking about this corner here that I messed up, that I got the router a little bit on sideways here and cut it on an angle, and I recut it here, and this is the line where it's supposed to be right here. I got thinking I got to fill that back up and recut it. So I started to get the Bondo out and fill it up with Bondo, and that would have been the quickest, simplest, fastest, easiest way to do it. But I got to thinking, I said, let me try something different. So I said, I happened to notice that this is a paint stirrer, sticks that you can buy, or they give them away actually a lot of times when you buy paint for stirring up paint.
Oh wow, look at that, it's brown. Why is it brown? Why is this brown? This is brown paint. This is brown paint. This is brown. This is frickin' brown. This is brown paint.
And it was just about the right size to fit in the groove. It's a little tight fitting. So I took one and I cut it down and I sanded it down a little bit, make it just a little bit thinner so that it'll fit into the groove with just a little bit of tension, not much. And then I cut another little one to go right up here on this top side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some wood glue and I'm going to go ahead and put wood glue on it and glue it. And this is going to take 24 hours for it to dry before I can cut it, but since I got a nice clean edge and the wood is good and hard here, and I can look in here, and this side is what it's going to bond to, because we're going to cut this side back out again with the slot cutter. And this is all wood right here. This corner, the bondo was only basically on this corner here and on the outer edge. So I'm going to get the wood glue here, and we're going to go ahead and glue this. So let's see. I don't want to overdo this with glue, but I want to get enough in there. And I'll just take and work it in there just to get it in the slot. All right, that should be enough in the slot. Then what I'm going to do is go ahead and coat the wood. I already drew a line on here. I don't know if you can see it because of the light, but so I know basically where it's going to go. And just make sure we give a good little coat on here. All right. Put it in the slot. Tap it in. Clean off the excess glue. Okay, now I'm going to put a little piece in this top edge. Basically do the same thing. Just spread a little bit of glue on it. And wipe off the excess glue. Now that's completely filled up that slot with wood, and it should adhere to the particle board pretty good. And once it dries, I'll come back with a saw and saw it off and then sand it flush, and then we can come back and cut a new T-molding slot, and hopefully this time I'll keep it straight. Well, it's been 24 hours and our wood that I put in the slot here ought to be good and dry and bonded. So now I'm going to have to cut it off flush with the cabinet, with the T-molding slot, and sand it down and then get the router and recut it. I'm going to cut it with this, this is a Harbor Freight oscillating saw. And it has a blade on here for wood or metal. And this is a neat little saw here. It oscillates. It doesn't spin. It just goes back and forth real fast. You can actually, when you turn it on, you can actually put your finger on the blade and it won't cut you. But when you put it on like wood or whatever, the oscillating going back and forth is just like a saw going back and forth on it real quick, and it saws pretty good. So even though this blade is a little wore, I need to get a new one. It ought to be sharp enough to get the job done. So let me go ahead and cut this off. Okay, well that went pretty quick. Made a pretty good job of it. It's fairly smooth. Right around this corner edge right here, I'm gonna have to sand it down a little bit, but I'll get the sander out, sand this down flat, and then we'll be able to get the router back out. And hopefully the second time is gonna be the charm. I don't wanna have to do it 3 times. And we'll go ahead and we'll cut this slot in here like it's supposed to be. Yeah, let's go ahead and sand it. Okay, that should do it. Now we can get the router back out and give it a second try. Okay, well, here goes nothing. Let's hope I can get it straight this time. Well, it's funny how just a little bit being off can make a big difference. But I can live with that. Yeah, that'll be good. Okay, that's taken care of. So I think I'm going to end the video right here. I originally thought that I was going to get to painting or repainting the sides where I bondoed and put the new T-molding on, but video's getting kind of long already, so I'm gonna end it here. And the next video, we'll go ahead and start with finishing up the T-molding slots on the other end of the cabinet where they're a little loose. Try to get those tightened up a little bit. And then we'll go ahead and paint the sides where we need to paint. And hopefully we'll get some T-molding on here. So that's the plan. So anyway, if you like what I'm doing, subscribe, tell your friends about it, and we'll see what we can do about getting the videos out a little bit quicker. I know this last one was kind of a little wait, but had a lot of things going on, so you know, this is a hobby, so we have to kind of do it as time permits. So anyway, till next time, we'll see you.
For us to be with you, always.